दर्शकवृन्द नमस्कार। कार्यक्रम रूपान्तरणमा तपाईलाई स्वागत छ। समष्टिगत विकाससँग जोडिएका विशिष्टीकृत विषयवस्तुमा विवेचना र विश्लेषण गरिने यो कार्यक्रममा आज हामी नेपाल स्थित युनेस्कोले सञ्चालन गरेका विभिन्न कार्यक्रमहरू के कस्ता छन्, कसरी सञ्चालन भइरहेका छन् भन्ने बारेमा कुराकानी गर्छौँ। त्यसमा पनि विशेष गरी युनेस्कोले सन् 2013 देखि 2015 को 2 वर्षको बीचमा पत्रकारहरूको सुरक्षा र दण्डहीनता सम्बन्धीको सवाललाई सम्बोधन गर्ने गरी एउटा आयोजना सञ्चालन गरेको छ र त्यो आयोजना कसरी सञ्चालन भइरहेको छ र त्यसबाट नेपाली जर्नलिस्टहरूको अर्थात् नेपाली पत्रकारहरूको सुरक्षाका लागि के कस्ता तौर तरिकाहरू हामी अपनाउँछौँ त भन्ने बारेमा कुराकानी गर्न गइरहेका छौँ। र यो विषयमा कुराकानी गर्नका लागि आज हामीले युनेस्कोका हेड अफ द अफिस एन्ड युनेस्को रिप्रेजेन्टेटिभ टु नेपालका लागि युनेस्कोका प्रतिनिधि र युनेस्कोका मुख्य व्यक्तित्व एक्सेल प्लाथेलाई स्टुडियोमा निम्ताएका छौँ। प्लाथे, you are heartily welcome in our program.
Thank you very much.
What are you doing nowadays?
Educational planning and the area of literacy, and to help the government to make the literacy mission Nepal a success. We are continuing our engagement in the preservation of the cultural heritage of Nepal, both the tangible heritage, which is so rich, the World Heritage properties are known to everybody, but also more and more in the area of intangible heritage, which is an important element for national identity. These are the living traditions of the Nepali people. And in communication and information, we have been focusing very much on the issue of right to information and the safety of journalists within the framework of our overall engagement for freedom of expression and press freedom. That is one of our main objectives globally, but also here in Nepal. So we have a very rich agenda presently, and we hope that we can contribute together with our partners from the UN system, but also the non-governmental partners and of course the government to Nepal's transition process.
As you have shared about the activities that you are implementing in Nepal, there are lots of activities. Some may be regular programs, some may be project-based activities. What is the working modalities of UNESCO in Nepal? How UNESCO is working?
We are implementing activities that are more of technical nature. Our main approach is providing technical assistance to the government and to our partners in very specific subjects. So we are not implementing large-scale direct development and assistance programs, but we are trying to help the government, for instance, to be more efficient in education planning, in statistical analysis and interpretation of statistical analysis. That's a very technical issue where we have expertise and where we can tap into a broad network of experts that we would bring in. In heritage, that's very similar. It's about technical assistance in how to manage World Heritage site, how to make archaeological surveys. In Lumbini we had recently very interesting discoveries in that area. That's very technical. So we are providing the technical expertise. We are providing the archaeologists or education planners that are needed in order to make government action or the action of our other partners more efficient. Similarly, in the area of media development, we are trying to bring into the country a perspective that is more global, that is of course human rights based and rights based in general, bringing into the knowledge and expertise that is existing outside the country. And so we are working basically as a technical agency. That is our characteristics, and we are trying also to be a laboratory of ideas, to bring new thinking into the country. What can be new in order to help, for instance, literacy through mother tongue based literacy.
What are the major interventions that are operating or implementing under the UNESCO, especially related to freedom of expression and right to information, as well as media and communication?
Well, we are known for celebrating together with you and the journalists in the country World Press Freedom Day every year on 3rd May. That is one of the most visible actions that we are doing here in Nepal, but also worldwide, using Press Freedom Day in order to send out the message. This year, by the way, the message of that day was safety of journalists, so we're focusing on safety of journalists. And then we are having concrete activities, concrete projects, both in the area of promoting the right to information among journalists, but also among citizens. That is one project that is funded by the European Union. And another project is very specific, dealing with the issue of safety of journalists. We are trying to help establishing a national mechanism that addresses the issue of safety of journalists. This project is funded by the United Nations Peace Fund of Nepal, which has provided us a small amount of money, but I believe we can very efficiently use these funds in order to help develop this mechanism that we believe is an important overarching tool in order to address the issue of safety of journalists, and not only safety of journalists, but impunity of actions against journalists. Which
we Nepali journalists and citizens are very much lucky because during your tenure you have implemented lots of projects related to freedom of expression and right to information.
Well, that is my personal conviction, of course, but that's also one of the reasons of our organization to deal with freedom of expression, because we believe that freedom of expression is not something that is only important for journalists. It's important for any democratic society. You must have, in order to have a democratic society, a press that is able to express itself freely, and not only a press. Freedom of expression is very often understood as solely addressing the journalists, but freedom of expression is also something that addresses the artists. For instance, artists must be free to express themselves in their artistic expression. We need the academic freedom, which is another form of of freedom of expression. So freedom of expression is something that is broader than just allowing journalists to write and speak what they believe they must say, but it is a more human rights-based approach to allowing individuals and groups to be open and to participate in an open way in democratic discourse.
As you told, freedom of expression is closely related to the overall development and promote the democratic society. Yes. And its connection directly goes to the press freedom as well. But if we observe the global scenario, if we analyze the data collected by International Federation of Journalists or Committee to Protect Journalists, every week a journalist is being killed in the world, and more than 90% but killing cases are not solved. It means they are unpunished. Yeah, and this is the scenario. In this case, United Nations has come up with action plan to the safety of journalists, and this under this UN action plan of safety of journalists, as you already told, Nepal has also got a project which is going to be implemented. Yes, what is the significance of this project in Nepal?
I believe the project is very important in Nepal, where you have the impression that there is a good press freedom situation. When you open the newspapers, you find free speech. There are many newspapers, there are many media outlets. The community radio sector is extremely vibrant and important. Very open. It seems to be very open, but when you look at under the surface, and you know that much better than I do, then you see that there are undercurrent restrictions. Journalists who self-censor themselves, they censor themselves, they do not write what they want to write, they are under pressure. There are incidents FNJ has recorded 271 incidents related to the safety of journalists in the last 12 months. So the situation looks at the surface good, but when you look closer, then you see there is a lot of threat to journalists, and we believe that we should address this issue. We must ensure that the journalists can really freely writing without being intimidated, without being under pressure from individual or groups, without being afraid of saying and writing what they believe should be said and written. So I believe this is the significance of the project.
How are you trying to address these issues?
We have to address the issue of lack of capacity of state security institutions and the judiciary to deal with cases of aggressions against journalists, violence against journalists. There are different approaches that we are going to take. We will be helping the training institutions of the police forces, for instance, but also of the judiciary to put more emphasis on that issue in the training of police officers and judicial staff. And we have to create awareness on these issues in these professional groups, but also in the broader public to explain why security of journalists is important for freedom of expression.
Awareness is targeted to general public?
There is a component of general public awareness creation in the project as well. And then we address the very practical things of personal safety of journalists, in particular women journalists who we know are much more becoming much more often victims of intimidation, and they are in a much more difficult situation very often because they have less possibilities to resist to intimidation.
You have really ambitious plan.
Yes, but you know, we are not alone in doing that. It's not really a UNESCO project, I must say. It's a project that was generated by the group of international non-governmental organizations, the so-called Nepal Media Mission, which comes to the country since a few years in order to observe the media situation in the country and the security situation in the country, in which, by the way, UNESCO is part, which has very closely worked since the beginning of the missions with the national media associations. And this international media mission has made earlier suggestions for the establishment of National Human Rights Commission-based mechanism. And so we are building on the work that has been done in the past by this group, in which, as I said, we were part. And this group is also this group of international non-governmental organizations working in the defense of freedom of expression and increasing safety of journalists, is also a partner in the implementation partner in the project, together with the national organizations like FNJ, Freedom Forum. We are working with ACORAP, which is a very important institution as the Association of Radio Broadcasters, because the community radios are so important here. We are working with the Women Journalists Associations, so we are trying to have as broad as possible group of partners to make this project a success, which is ambitious.
Sir, what is the reasons behind the bringing up these lots of organizations in same platforms under this project?
Well, the main reason is that an organization like UNESCO would never be successful in working alone on that issue that is so intimately linked to the national structures and the national institutions and the national actors. It would not be a success. So we are merely a conduit, as UNESCO as an organization, merely a conduit in order to voice the concerns and the needs and to realize the needs of the groups that are the main stakeholders in the country. And they are very strong. They are very strong groups. The journalist associations, journalist professional groups are extremely influential, and they are not only the stakeholders, but they are clear actors in that area. So we need to work with them.
We can say that this is the initiative to establish the permanent national mechanism that can continuously work on the safety and impunity of journalists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the criteria for sustainability and for success of this project. If we are succeeding to have this mechanism in place, if the National Human Rights Commission is able to run this mechanism, then I believe we were successful with our project.
This increasing the safety of journalists project is launched in 4 countries, that is Iraq, South Sudan, Pakistan and Nepal. What is your observation? Is the case of safety of journalists and impunity is similar to the other remaining countries, or it differs?
It differs. Each country has its own situation and its own mechanisms, its own patterns of violence, of course, that are deeply rooted in the political situation of those countries and in the culture, in the way of the country. So it's very much different from country to country.
You have expressed or you have articulated many things about the project. I again would like to request you, could you please point out the major objective of this project, what you envisage after through this project?
And the framework is the mechanism. It is better capacity of the state security institutions. It is a better understanding of the judiciary on the way how to address cases of violence against journalists. So this is the main objective, establishing as a mechanism by which the state can ensure the safety of the journalists working in the country.
You have experience of more than 3 or 4 months of implementing this increasing safety of journalists project. What is your preliminary observation regarding the issue?
We are very much at the beginning, as you said. We have just started in a way. And what we are doing presently is we go out to try to reach out to all our stakeholders. We speaking to a lot of groups. We have been launching this project here in Kathmandu with a kickoff meeting where many people came to listen to the objectives of the project. We have been in Dankuta, we have been in Chitwan to speak about the project, the kickoff meetings, because we are focusing geographically on the eastern hills and the central Terai, because there the situation is particularly critical for journalists. So we are getting feedback from the stakeholder groups, from the journalists, but also from the police forces, from the armed police forces, from the judiciary, who were always present in our meetings. So we saw a lot of uniforms in our meetings, which was I found quite interesting. So we are reaching out. We are trying to explain. We get input from these groups in order to better shape the project. We are having the next 2 weeks consultations in 5 regions on the mechanism itself. There is a terms of reference that was drafted that is available for the human rights the mechanism that is based in the Human Rights Commission, which we will put on the table, and we will ask the journalists, the security forces, to comment on that, to say is that going to function.
Now you are going to organize consultation meeting in 5 development regions and 1 national level consultation meeting, yes. And how will you incorporate the inputs and suggestions collected under these consultations in the national mechanism, and to develop the national mechanism and national framework?
So it will be a very concrete work that is to be done, and we will not only address the mechanism, but we will also ask questions about what is the best way to establish a rapid intervention task force, for instance. So what do we need to do in order to help you if there is an incident in your in the VDC in your district? Do you need immediate help coming, a group of 2-3 people coming from Kathmandu in order to help you better understand what has happened to this colleague of yours who has been aggressed? And so this will be one of the questions that we will be asking in these consultation meetings.
You seem very optimistic regarding the proposed national mechanism and national framework regarding the safety of journalists and impunity issues. how this proposed national mechanism will work from national to local level?
The idea is that there will be a group of 9 to 10 representatives sitting in the mechanism who will be dealing with individual cases. They will look at the individual cases. They will help documenting the cases, not themselves, but they will get documentations on the cases, and they will bring those cases to instances that need to deal with the cases, for instance, the police or the judiciary.
National Human Rights Commission is operating its regional office in 5 development regions as well. Will this national mechanism has the provisions up in at regional level?
I believe that we have to see. We are really at the beginning of thinking about the terms of reference of this mechanism. We can use the regional offices of the National Human Rights Commission. We can use the structures that INSEC, for instance, has established. INSEC is very strong in documenting human rights violations, including violations of freedom of expression and cases of aggressions against journalists. So,
will this national mechanism respond all case of insecurity of journalists? I mean, there are accidental cases and murder cases, yeah? Will this national mechanism respond both accidental and targeted killing cases or targeted unsafety cases of journalists?
Mainly, of course, address issues of targeted aggressions that have political or criminal reasons. But it will be more, I believe the focus will be more on the political issues than on the criminal cases. It will not deal with accidental accidents that may happen to journalists or not. That will not be the task of the mechanism. The mechanism is really to look after cases in which journalists have been aggressed because they have written something that may not please those people to which the article is referring.
What would be the scenario of safety of journalists in Nepal after the completion of this project?
I hope that any journalist, man or woman in Nepal, will be able to write freely whatever he or she wants to write. But I must say, based on professional ethics and based on the good capacity to do the job of a journalist, because this we have not addressed it. This would be an entire new debate. The ethical behavior of journalists and the good capacity to do the journalistic job is as crucial as a national security environment for journalists. So journalists have their own responsibility very often also when it comes to their security. So I hope that we have a situation in, let's say, 3-4 years when the mechanism is fully operational, which allows journalists to be free and can speak up for the benefit of the citizens of this country.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
हस्त दर्शकवृन्द, यही कुराकानीका साथ आजको रूपान्तरण कार्यक्रम यही सकिन्छ र भर्खरै युनेस्कोका नेपालका लागि युनेस्कोका प्रतिनिधि तथा प्रमुख एक्सल प्लाथेले भन्नुभए जस्तै नेपालमा जुन पत्रकारको सुरक्षा सम्बन्धीको आयोजना सञ्चालन गरिएको छ, यो आयोजनामा मात्रै सीमित रहने होइन, यो सहयोगको लागि एउटा राष्ट्रिय र स्थायी प्रकृतिको संयन्त्र निर्माणका लागि गरिएको सहयोग हो र यो संयन्त्र निर्माण गरिएपछि यसले पत्रकारका सुरक्षा र दण्डहीनताका सवालहरूलाई निरन्तर रूपमा सम्बोधन गर्नेछ। आशा गरौँ यो किसिमको वातावरण बन्नेछ र यसले प्रेस स्वतन्त्रता अनि अभिव्यक्ति स्वतन्त्रता र नागरिकको सूचनाको अधिकारलाई निर्बाध रूपमा उपभोग गर्ने वातावरण बन्नेछ, जुन प्रजातन्त्रको सबलीकरणका लागि पूर्व शर्त पनि मानिन्छ। यही कुराकानीका साथ आजको रूपान्तरण कार्यक्रम यही सकिन्छ। अर्को हप्ता फेरि तपाईँ हाम्रो भेटघाट हुन्छ। आजलाई बिदा दिनुहोस्। नमस्कार।